All right, well, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Great, like I mentioned before, to see a lot of familiar faces on the screen. I'm Tom Schreier, as many of you know, and I'm pleased to be the director of this Inspiring Conversation series, and also the founding director of the Inspired Leadership Initiative at the University of Notre Dame, which is our program for those who have completed their chosen career and look to return to campus for an academic year to discover, discern, and design their next act. I want to sincerely thank you for participating in this installment of the Inspiring Conversation series, where we're spending this semester discussing leading people in an ever-changing world. We're excited and humbled by the amount of interest this program has generated, as we have over 900 participants, ranging from ILI fellows to alumni to faculty, students, and friends of the university registered to join us over the fall semester. We're also excited because this group spans over 26 countries from around the world. We've designed this conversation today to have as much engagement as possible, facilitated by having a Q&A session later, which I encourage you to participate in. Before we start, I want to thank once again all of those who have put in so much time and lent their talents to bring this program to life. I'd like to particularly thank the Alumni Association for all the thought and the work they have put into this platform, ThinkND, Notre Dame's online learning community. Now just a couple of quick technical items. You're all muted by the host to facilitate a smooth program without background noise. Later in the program, we will have a question and answer session. This will be facilitated by you submitting questions for our guests through the Google form, which is being shared with you now via the chat function. You can link to this form and submit your question anytime during the session. Also, we recommend you use Speaker View in Zoom, as that will highlight our speakers as they come on screen. This week, we're thrilled to welcome to the session our second couple, and one who knows a great deal about leading with purpose and humanity by aligning head and heart, Hortense Gentil and Hubert Joly. Both have shown this profound form of leadership throughout their careers and have written about it in their books and continue to model this today together. Ever since having the pleasure of getting to know them, I've been struck by their willingness to go beyond traditional leadership to model human-centered leadership by being willing to show the world that they can marry fundamental leadership principles with heart, and that this form of leadership is not only consistent with their principles, but they have proven it works. It is a pleasure and a privilege to welcome Hubert and Hortense to Inspiring Conversations. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. We're delighted to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with a question that kind of gets to what I just mentioned. You've both been quite successful in your own rights. At what point did you each recognize that success didn't come through the model of the leader as a smart, powerful superhero?
So I see three stages in my life. So the first one was years ago. I was working with a leader who thought he had all the answers. So he didn't listen to people. He didn't take care of people. He was always right and passing orders. People felt not respected and, of course, not included, so not feeling belonging. Two, it was then when I was the founder of my own company in steel industry. I didn't know much about steel, but I was working with brilliant engineers and asked them to teach me all I needed to know. My field was more marketing, sales, and managing. And I knew what I knew, but I knew what I didn't know, of course. So so consequently, we learned to know each other and to respect each other. So I think it was for me really a wake-up moment to understand that. Three, I worked as a coach with a CEO who came to me and was working hard, but was absolutely disconnected from base. He was all about the place running, and he felt always frustrated and not understood. He was absolutely not aware of his lack of communication and leadership. He was like, a chicken without head. And so, he was, the body was there, the head was there, but he was looking for a neck, and he was absolutely not aware of that. And the neck was, the communication and listen. So he learned that, how to communicate and how to deeply listen to people. And this changed everything. So he found fun in his job and in his life. So that was for me my 3 points.
So for me, Tom, it's been a 25-year journey, and I would admit to you that I'm still in remission. My first step was in the early 90s. I actually learned from a very inspiring conversation with a client. I was at McKinsey at the time. And this guy, Jean-Marie Descartes, had just come back from his seminar, and he was sharing a sort of principles with us. He told me at the time, look, Hubert, the purpose of a company is not to make money. It's an imperative to make money. But success in business is going to come from success on 3 imperatives. The people imperative, meaning having good people that are well-trained and can do a great job. The business imperative, having customers who are happy, that leads to the financial performance. But his key point was that people are at the beginning of in the end. It's excellence on people that leads to excellence on business, which leads to excellence on finance. And it's really the ultimate purpose of the company is to contribute to the common good. So he put people at the center. The second step, so I understood this intellectually. The second step was when I started a bit more than 10 years ago in 2009, working with a coach, Marshall Goldsmith, who's probably the father of all executive coaches in the US. And Marshall has written this book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And he highlights the 20 quirks of successful people. And out of the 20, I had 13. And the most predominant one was being smart and leading by being smart, making sure everybody knows how smart you are, and adding too much value. And he helped me realize through a 360 that this was counterproductive. And then the third step was really at Best Buy, where I truly understood the power of unleashing human magic. And that the way we were going to be successful at Best Buy, of course, I had to make some decisions early on in our turnaround, like matching online prices. But ultimately, it was by creating an environment in which 125,000 people could be the best version of themselves, to delight customers day in and day out. And so my work was not being smart, but by creating the environment in which others could be very effective. So this has been my journey, 25 years, Tom. It took me a long time.
Something tells me it didn't take all 25 years to get there for either. But so talk a little bit about, as leaders, whether you can convince people, others that have been educated in kind of the more traditional way of leadership, that purpose and human connections can constitute the very heart of business.
So I will say 2 words here. First, I think role model are the best thing and the best one. And I don't think that you can convince people. They really have to want to change. So they have to be aware that something is wrong, or something could be better, and from there, really want to change. This is my experience in coaching.
Yeah, if we use your word, Tom, which is how do you convince people, in theory, the intellectual argument is really easy to win, right? You're going to have to do less and get better results. How cool is that? The problem is that there's a long way, it's probably the longest journey we all have to make, right, from the head to the heart, the 18 inches. So to really fully appreciate the value of a purposeful, human-centric leadership, it's a personal experience. And I would say this year with the COVID crisis and then the events, the killing of George Floyd, when I look at my former peers in business and leaders, in these times of crisis, it was impossible, forget about the intellectual argument, it was impossible to not realize that people and the well-being of our colleagues and our customers was essential. With work from home, you had to be blind not to see that there was a person with a family that you need to take care of. There was their physical health, their mental health, their surroundings. And I admire my successor at Best Buy, Corey Barry. She decided, even though Best Buy was considered an essential retailer, she decided to close the stores back in March to take care of the safety of the employees and the customers, pivoted to contactless curbside pickup. And I remember there's a CEO in France that I know well. It was the CEO of Accor, the French hotel company. He said, at this time, this is not about the head. This is about the heart and the guts. If you're not able to lead with your guts in these times, I don't know who you are. So I think it's these kinds of experiences that lead us to discover that we have to lead with all of our body parts. We have to lead with our head, which we get trained with, but it's also our heart, our soul, our guts, our eyes, our eyes are here, our ears, our hands, all of our body parts. So it's the experience. The intellectual argument is not sufficient to Hortense's.
Yeah, and I will jump on, if I may, I would just want to jump on that and say that in this crisis, what we understand is people are, leader. There is no notebook, playbook, of how to do, because it's not everybody realize that we cannot do like before, because in the past nobody, we didn't know that, and the future is absolutely uncertain. So I think now we see more and more leaders staying at the present moment and try to find other way, because alone they are not going to find anything. They understand that, in belonging, in sharing with others, it's much better, and they can, and this is the only way to go right now. So this is, I think it's increased this movement.
Yeah.
So before we move on to another topic, one thing that struck me in what you just said, I think ties to a principle, Hortense, that's in your book of alignment, right? Can you just talk a little bit? I think what Hubert said was that actually you can do less and get more done, which is a pretty big statement in and of itself. And I think it's kind of central to what you've written about. Can you just spend a minute talking about that? Because I think it's a really important element of a lot of what you've written about and talked about.
So yeah, so I think that when you come back to yourself, when you are back to your values, and you are sure of who you are, and your why you want to do that, what kind of leader you want to be, where you want to go. So really aligned with yourself. From that moment, you can walk on the next step and say, okay, next step is what kind of vision I have, what kind of leader I want to be in my organization, in my environment. So if you don't know about yourself, if you're not aligned with yourself, you cannot align with whatever, because you don't know with what to align. So I think you have to begin by the beginning. So a leader, a person, it's us. Everything is here, in fact, ready between the heart, the soul, the head. We know everything. So we are running everywhere to try to find answer, and in fact we know everything. So and then when you're aligned, everything, you are in the groove. You are, it's like surfing in a wave, and you take the wave, and everything seems easy.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how, both of you now are engaged, I believe, together actually in coaching. How do you coach this style of leadership? And maybe also just a little bit of an additional message, because a big part of our audience is also students, and they're going to work for people that maybe don't lead with this kind of a enlightened approach. How could they perhaps influence the worlds in which they're going to be entering when they enter the workforce?
I think that that first, was what we always say is, everyone is a leader. So you have really to understand that. And when you are a student, and even if you begin, you are a leader. Why? Because you are a leader of your life and your environment. So imagine that it's your first job or second job, whatever, if you come back from an MBA. And so you can influence your environment, or the people with who you work. You can be the leader you want to be there. So of course, so by the role model, maybe, in doing that, maybe you can influence the leader with who you're working, and maybe he doesn't understand because he didn't experience that. So in doing, maybe you can influence others. But what you can do, of course, is you can do for yourself, or again, your environment, but your personal environment also, because we are not cut. So we are one person. So the same person is at home, and the same person is going to work. So, and you really have to be always this same person.
Yeah, and to your question, is this coachable, right? I think any one of us can get better. And how we lead is not inscribed in our DNA. That's not what it is, right? When people tell you people don't change, that's wrong. It's not in the DNA. So this is highly coachable. The question is how? What does it take to become a better leader? And of course, it's a life journey. In a sense, Tom, I'm the living proof that you can change, right? I'm the before and after picture in the infomercial, because I grew up really with a heavy emphasis on leading, with your brain. I went to some of the best schools. Started with McKinsey, so problem solving was really, really high. And since 2009, I've had a coach permanently. I think that leaders, executives should have a coach. 100% of the top 100 tennis players in the world have a coach. Even Notre Dame, the football team at Notre Dame has a coach. So, all of us need it. Now, whether it's a coach, whether it's a spiritual director, you can have a conversation here, but we need help. Role models. I've learned so much from others during my professional life. At Best Buy, I'll give credit to Corey, my successor, but also to Sherry Barrard, who was the head of HR and the head of stores. And she taught me so much. She taught me that the company is a human organization made of individuals working together in support of a goal. And that irrespective of size, it's really one individual at a time. I learned from some of our frontliners. There was a store manager in Boston. He would ask a very simple question to every one of the associates in the store. He would ask them the question, what is your dream? At Best Buy or outside of Best Buy, what is your dream? And then he said, my role is to help you achieve your dream. And so, it's practice. Role models, coach, it's a journey. I think that in spirituality, we place a lot of importance on the daily prayer. Hortense, in our coaching practice, has got the daily question. So if every day we can ask ourselves, did I do my best today to become a better leader, to listen more, to empower others around me? And if we're kind with ourselves, right, this is not about a quest for perfection, then we can be on this journey to become better leaders. And one of the greatest things I may have learned is vulnerability. One of our favorite phrases today, especially since I've started to teach now in my new chapter, is my name is Hubert and I need help. And it's amazing, back to the superhero discussion that you had at the beginning, Tom. It's amazing if you start this conversation like this, how much help you can get. And so being vulnerable and sharing with others that we need help to get better, I think it's a wonderful way. If we're thriving for perfection, and if the idea that we're invulnerable, this creates an inhuman world. And we know that the heart of business is to put purpose as the North Star and people at the center of business. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you said you just said to Hubert that, I'm Hubert and I need help, right? I mean, it actually sounds a little bit like, to be honest, what happens with people that have chemical issues, right? Sometimes you just first have to admit that you need it, right? Another thing that I hear kind of emerge a bit, and I just love for you to touch a little bit on it, is just the role of kind of the spiritual element, right? This is the University of Notre Dame, so you can say anything you want about the spiritual element there. It's safe territory. But maybe just so, because you had mentioned spiritual director in addition to coach. I mean, is there some interplay there, something else that we could all learn from?
I think that, and Hortense and I have talked a lot about this, because Hortense has been influenced by Hindu philosophy and some of the Indian spiritual leaders, and I've been born and raised as a Catholic. Essential to our lives is to, and you use the word, right, discern who we are and who we want to be. For me, I've gotten great help from doing the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola, and the daily examen prayer in that spirituality is incredibly powerful. This idea that, again, we need to lead with all of our body parts, and the soul is so important. And it's interesting, Tom, how we tend to forget this, right? And I would admit, years ago, when I would interview candidates for a job, I would focus most of my interview on experience, expertise. This doesn't seem like to be a good person. Somebody you and I know, Marilyn Carlson Nelson, when she interviewed me for the CEO job at Best Buy, one of her questions during the 8-hour interview I did on our plane coming back from Paris to Minneapolis was, Hubert, tell me about your soul. Who asked these questions? Right, Marilyn does. And increasingly in my interview, I would ask about, what drives you as an individual? What gives you energy? What are some of your dreams? And a turning moment at Best Buy was when, as an executive team, we were able to share our life journey and our life's purpose. And this was a turning point to then craft the purpose of Best Buy and propel us into this next year. And so I think that we shouldn't, the Pope said, don't be afraid, right? We shouldn't be afraid to lead with all of our body parts and be whole people. And spirituality is one of these, one of the dimensions that, of course, is so critical to us.
Yeah, and I think that, we are I think everybody is looking for meaning. And, different kind of spirituality. You can go to the church, or you can be Catholic, or that's true that for myself, I am a Catholic, but I found, the Sri Aurobindo, I'm a follower of Sri Aurobindo, and all this philosophy resonates a lot with what I was looking for. But it's the same, it doesn't change anything. It's just, at the end of the day, we are all going to this in the same direction and looking for meaning. And that's true that we don't talk too much about spirituality, and especially leadership. So, and when you practice, so I practice a lot for a long time, since a long time now, but I didn't tell it a lot. So I think it's the first time now that I'm in the US and that I have the opportunity to talk today, that we really accept the fact that it's a big driver, and it helped me a lot. And every day, Hubert and I, we practice every day. We try to have 15 minutes together, and to to talk about spirituality. And so we read a book. The book is The Journey to the Heart, or whatever. But it's important for us to at least have 15 minutes per day together to recenter, and realign ourselves after a long day together. So
it's interesting, Tom, to see how a number of corporations in this country have, created meditation room. The mindfulness movement is a step in that direction. And all of the CEOs, or many, I would say many, because I don't know all of them, the CEOs that you and I would know, you know, they're human beings, right? They're not machines. They are, you know, it's interesting how Satya Nadella at Microsoft, when he introduces himself, he says, I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm a spouse. Oh, and I'm also the CEO of Microsoft, as opposed to, I am the CEO of Microsoft, you know, pay attention to me. And there's so many others, John Donahoe at Nike, who was at eBay before, you know, our common friend Bill George, you know, there's so many great examples. People don't talk much about it, but, you know, it's such an important element of who we are. And I think during this COVID crisis, you know, one of the things we told our clients is, if you cannot go outside, go inside and find out who you are, who you want, what kind of a leader do you want to be? Slow down, take time with yourself. And I think that's spirituality, of course.
And refuel, and don't forget every day. So, you know, refuel is, you know, where you can get energy moment with yourself. Just, you know, meditate, but meditate means, you know what, means just be at the present moment. So be aware of what's happened right now. So now I'm talking to Tom and to all of you that I don't see everybody, but it doesn't matter. So I'm here. I'm not thinking of, oh, what I'm going to do next or what I had to do before. So if I'm here, I can communicate with you. I can see, I can, you know, I can feel, even if there is screen. But this is really the idea of being here at the present moment. But for that, you have to exercise, and you have to do it every day. So, and another, yeah, and Hubert was talking about the daily question. So that's true that this is something that I give to my clients, and I use myself, by the way. You know, or I list everything that I should do better. So listening or exercise or whatever. So did I do my best too? But yeah, but the secret is, did I do my best, like Hubert said? And this is where very often, you know, the leaders struggle, because they say, no, I don't want to do my best. I don't want to be the best. I say, no. So let's go back. And it's very interesting to understand that.
Well, that was wonderful. I'm glad we got it. That was beautiful. This whole concept of kind of recentering and this role of spirituality is something that we find to be so valuable in the program that I lead. Right? You know, we don't really push spirituality on people, but they're drawn to it at some level as they go deeper. And a lot of those threads, I think, carried through exactly what you said. One other thing that I'd love to touch on before we move to the questions from the audience, which are coming in here wonderfully, is talk a little bit about how these principles have affected and influenced you, and just whatever influences you as a couple. We don't have an opportunity too often to have a couple be on Inspiring Conversations. I think just talking a little bit about, you know, how you see the kinds of things you talk about, not just working kind of from a business or broader personal leadership, but also within your own relationship.
So I begin. So I will just begin by the beginning. So at the beginning, we have written our manifesto for life. So we shared what was important for us. You know, we were very clear on our purpose, which, you know, Hubert and I. We are very both aligned and focused on the heart of our business. This is a future book, and so yeah, so it was very important. I think it guides our life. So we respect each other. We know the world. We support each other. I think we are listening very well and communicate very well. I think we share our emotion, and we can talk, you know, in security. So I think this is important for us. And as we said before, we make time, you know, every day, 15 minutes to share and to continue to share.
You know, if I had to pile on, yes, it's this alignment on our respective individual purpose in life, as well as trying to craft a common purpose, which in part has led us to coach and mentor clients together based on the feedback of some clients who thought that this was helpful. it's the idea of supporting each other in our respective endeavors, and also, you know, when I'm maybe going sideways, I'm working too hard and so forth. Hortense is very good at supporting me by giving me a whack on the side of the head and saying, you know, let's go back to what's important. Communication, and again, this multi-layer relationship, right? It's the intellectual dimension, the spiritual dimension, the emotional dimension, the physical dimension. This, having all of these layers of connectivity is really critical. So back to the beginning of your conversation about, is it all in the brain and in the power? No, it's this multi-layered approach, and it's this human-centric, you know, focus on relationships.
And I would maybe add something like try to understand each other. Very important. So empathy. We were talking about empathy yesterday. Yeah, it's very important. And empathy is only try to understand the other, not from your point of view, but from his or her point of view. So I think this is something that we try our best to do. Not succeed every day.
Well, let's move to a few questions here from the audience. The first is from Bill Schenner. He's an alumni of our program, actually. He hails from Carmel, Indiana, and he asks, since leadership is so important to one's career development and productivity at work, when finding a job, how does one interview prospective employers and companies to ensure that they are not simply speaking of soul and development and mentorship, but are actually putting that into action? Many employers use the right watchwords to sell their companies to prospective employees, but either fail to implement them as their values or don't really intend to do so in the first place. So how would you respond to that?
Well, so how do you interview and how do you do your due diligence, not just on the financials, right,
Yeah.
or the business success, but the cultural dimensions? It's interesting that you said that as you're being interviewed, you're interviewing as well. So, you know, it's asking questions, of course. It's also, you know, last time I interviewed for a job, it was when I applied for the job at Best Buy. So what did I do? I of course, was speaking with the committee of the board that was interviewing me, but I also spoke with alumni. Alumni can be a great source of information. I did some mystery shopping, so visited stores and could see, you know, what it was like on the front line. You know, and similarly, my first week on the job at Best Buy was not in a windowless conference room looking at spreadsheets. It was spent working in stores to really understand from the front line, because there can be a huge disconnect between what's on the website, what's in the executive suite, and what's happening on the front line. So this would be a couple of ideas on how to try to gather some impressions.
Yeah. And just I just have to add to stay very aligned with yourself and feel, you know, when you are interviewing, when you are talking with people, if you are really at the present moment and you try to feel, to understand if it's true or if it's just, you know, the head who is talking. You can feel it, in fact, because there is a big difference.
So another question from Atun here in snowy Minnesota. He asks, it's very inspiring to see both of you emphasize the importance of listening and human connection. How can we be better at listening and connecting in this very divisive and unprecedented period?
Okay, so another Best Buy story. When I was speaking with our officers and our teams, I said one of the unique things about everybody at Best Buy is they have 2 ears and just one mouth, right? So that you can actually listen. So this humility, you know, it's as leaders, it's so easy to lose track. right? If you look at your share price every day, you look at reports in the home office, you listen to people around you who praise you because, you know, what happens when you're a leader is that people tend to praise you. So you have to break this mold, and there's nothing like spending time, you know, on the front line, listening to the frontliners. You know, I'll always remember, Tom, a board meeting early on in my tenure. We were doing a strategic offsite we were in the San Francisco market. And instead of having the executives do dog and pony shows to the board, telling them how good we were, we actually had a handful of frontliners, so store general managers, geek squad leaders, local market leaders, do a panel and tell us what it was really like on the front line. And that, of course, required an environment where it was okay to be vulnerable. I mean, the CEO, me at the time, felt okay by having the frontliners tell the board exactly how it was. So it requires instilling a culture in which it's not about perfection. It's okay to say, I don't know. And a big part of our role as a leader is to create this environment in which others can be successful. So Cami Scarlett, our head of HR at Best Buy, wonderful leader. A few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, she shared with everybody at Best Buy that she had suffered from depression, mental illness. And by the way, in any human group, there's probably 20% of us who suffer from some form of mental illness. By having Cami sitting on the executive team share that she'd been struggling with depression, she made the place overnight completely human. And she got flooded with emails, you know, of empathy and support and saying, oh my God, I did too, or I do too. And so it's these behaviors, you know, how do you change behaviors, Tom? It's by changing behavior. So if as leaders, we can role model this listening, this vulnerability, this empathy, and putting people at the heart of business, then I think that's the journey we're on.
And I think that as a coach, I think I will. This is an excellent question because listening is not easy. So, we're talking about deep listening. So, how do you deep listen? You deep listen in being free of noise, outside noise. So, all your, you know, the thoughts that you can have and everything. So, and really be empathic with the person in front of you and really want to listen, not judge, not having an answer. It's not a question of, you know, of what can I say? We don't mind. And deep listening is that. It's really, I'm here. I don't think about anything else. I'm just looking at you. I just listen. And from there, you will have answer, maybe if you have to answer. But this is really, you know, learn to listen deeply. And this is respecting the other and, you know, and communicate that.
Let me pile on, if I may, Tom. So one of our compatriots from the 17th century, René Descartes, is famous for having said, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And today, I think that a better formula would be ego videor ergo sum. I am seen, therefore I am. So it's listening, it's also seeing. I think that I was struck one day, Tom, visiting a store. There was a young man, maybe 18-year-old. His life had changed the day one of his managers had recognized him and had taken an interest in him. So he felt seen and respected. One of the issues with, you know, the experience of Black leaders is that they're not seen, right? There's this great book, Invisible Man. If you're not seen, then you don't exist. Then you're not going to be the best version of yourself. And so it's listening, and it starts by seeing and taking notice. So I'm not trying to compete with René Descartes, but I think this idea of I am seen, therefore I am, is a powerful idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's a testament to both of you, though, that you created an environment where people were comfortable being vulnerable. I think, all of our experiences, it's not an easy thing to do to create that kind of environment, but for somebody to feel comfortable to come forth and talk about being depressed and the kind of cathartic effect that has is really powerful. So I applaud both of you for both, first of all, talking about, but most importantly, creating the kind of culture and environment where people can be comfortable. Because then I think people can be authentically human when they have that kind of comfort level. So congrats to both of you for doing that. Another question, which gets to it's a little bit more practical, but I think it's really important because we're seeing what people who are incredibly good coaches can do. And this question comes from David, and it's, can you recommend a way to find a good coach? Are there telltale signs to look for when identifying the right coach? And also just talk a little bit about, coaches that kind of span the full kind of economic spectrum, right? I mean, not everybody can afford every coach. So maybe just a little bit about how people who are beginning their career all the way to the pinnacle of their career can find a good coach.
Yeah. So yes, this is a good question. I think that
I would have said there's a simple answer. Call Hortense and you have a good coach. But let's see what Hortense can add to this. Sorry, Tom.
No. Yeah. Well, for my part, what I would say is I am part with, of course, the Marshall Goldsmith MG100. So I think we have plenty of coaches here, and I think you could go to the website of Marshall and try to find a coach who can correspond to you. So what is a good coach and not a good coach? I absolutely don't know. What I know is that as a coachee, you have to find somebody that first you have confidence in it. So you feel good, you feel confident, you trust him or her, and you are aligned with her, his philosophy, or who or she wants to give you. So this is all about, it's not in the CV, so I would it's not in the resume, but maybe try to talk to coaches as much as you can, and there are many times. And if you don't have enough, if you cannot afford, there are a lot of we all do pro bono. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to try to talk with somebody. And I will recommend to go to Marshall Goldsmith's website again and try to find there, because they have, I don't know now, 300 or 400 people or something like that. Yeah. So, and I would be happy to help to guide if somebody needs. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything.
No, you're to perfection.
Well, that's a wonderful and generous offer to help to guide, because I can't imagine there being anyone better to help to guide. So shifting a little bit to maybe another one of those topics that's complicated in the environment we operate in today beyond the pandemic and the search for racial justice that you both mentioned, and that is the political climate. And there's some guidance that people are looking for in their questions. Claire from Notre Dame here asked the question, as does Skip, and they kind of get to what a business leader's role should be in this kind of a divisive political environment. And one asked the question, what does one do the day after the election is decided when you know that your population, if you have a large enterprise, is going to be divided and there are going to be emotions that are going to be present in the workplace?
Yeah, so business leaders, of course, are not political leaders, so they cannot be confused. However, a major change that has taken place, I would say in the last 10 years, is the fact that business leaders now feel that they have a responsibility for all stakeholders involved in the company. It was interesting, it was September 13th last month, it was the 50th anniversary of the article that Milton Friedman wrote in the New York Times about the primacy of shareholders. Well, Milton Friedman is dead, and his theory is dead. Last year, the Business Roundtable issued that statement around corporate purpose, the importance of corporate purpose, and the importance of taking care of our stakeholders. The employees, the customers, the community, the vendors, and the shareholders, which, by the way, are there to take care of our retirement, right? So we want them to do well. There's a judgment to be made for in what cases do you get involved in societal matters, right? You cannot be chasing every car, you cannot be chasing every rat in every rat hole. So the key criteria for me is it connected to our business and our people? So when I was CEO at Best Buy, we got involved around the issues surrounding the dreamers, because we had a lot of our employees who were dreamers, and so felt that we had to take care of them. Also, after the travel ban that the president had decided, I was not in charge of the travel ban, and I could not, overturn it. I'm not a decision maker on that. But I wanted to make sure that every Muslim employee at the company felt that they were safe and that they belonged. So every time I would visit stores and I would see somebody who would be visibly Muslim, or I could guess that they would be Muslim, then I would reach out to them and say, are you feeling safe and feeling that you belong here? Clearly, after the killing of George Floyd, unfortunately in Minneapolis, you would need to be blind to not see that if the place is burning, you cannot run a business. So all of the business leaders in the cities have decided that it was their responsibility to do their part to end racial inequality and racial injustice in the cities. It's something that makes sense from a business standpoint, from the standpoint of the employees, from the standpoint of the community. So this is a no-brainer. Similarly, the environment, you have to be responsible for the environment. Again, if our planet is burning, it's going to be hard to run a business. So at Best Buy, we had a significant initiative on reducing our carbon footprint and so forth. So as relates to the elections, again, you're not a political leader, but I'll just rewind back to 2016. By definition, half of the people around us are going to be, on average, right, are going to be excited, and the other half are going to be depressed. My advice to my friends who were depressed last time was to say, well, if you don't like and at the time I was not a citizen, so I was not involved in the election. I'm going to vote this time. But if you feel that you're feeling depressed because of who got into the White House, and if you don't like the new president, then don't give him the power to influence how you feel. If you don't respect the person, don't give him that power. And if there's causes that you care about, then pursue these causes. So that was personal advice. Now, as the CEO of a company, looking at the company, I again admire what my successor is doing. She's trying to bring everybody together around the pursuit of some common objectives. And that's where I think in business, putting a noble purpose as the North Star of business and people at the center. And if we can contribute to the common good by working together as a community of human beings, then we can create human magic. And that's how you transcend, I think, politics, because at the heart of every human being, there's a desire to find meaning in their life and to do good things in the world. So it's the idea of focusing on what I can control. I'm not the product of my environment. I am the product of my decision, I think Steve Covey said. So that's my 2 cents on this. But clearly, Tom, I think all of us know this. We as business leaders have this huge responsibility that goes way beyond, the immediate business success. It's the long-term well-being of everybody involved.
Yeah, and I would just add to that it's always the same story. Go back to your value. If as a leader, you think you have to speak up and take a position, like much of our clients, so take position. And you know, doesn't matter the consequence, but take position. I think it's important for yourself as a leader to stay aligned with your value. You know, if you think that it's important, it's important. So speak up and focus. And on the other part is, you know, the secret maybe could be focus on the one you can change. You know, if you cannot change anything about the political or whatever, you know, why do you take energy to be depressed or think about it? So you cannot do anything. So okay, so you know, go back to where you can do something, or what you can change, or where you can have impact. So that would be my two advice.
So clearly from the questions, and I wish we could get to all of them here, people are, you know, very moved by a lot of what you're saying. And one of the threads that runs through a couple of other questions here is, you know, in addition to your book, Hortense, Aligned, and Hubert, you can shamelessly plug the book that's coming up that you're writing too. Are there other books that you've read that have had a major influence on who you are and how you lead?
Yes, I think I have Marshall Goldsmith, so Triggers, or What Got You Here Don't Get You There. So the two books are, you know, really, really good. The book of Kevin Cashman, Leadership from the Inside, from the Outside, I think.
From the inside out?
Yeah, from the inside out. For me, was absolutely beautiful read, and you know, it opened a lot of doors. So will be the three of them.
So you
have many.
So I'll take your offer to do one infomercial about my upcoming book. I'm so excited because the book is done, it's getting into production. So it'll be called The Heart of Business, Leadership Principles for the Next Era of Capitalism. In a sense, it's the secret sauce behind the turnaround of Best Buy, but importantly, it's a set of leadership principles that I think it can serve in accelerating the necessary refoundation of business and capitalism around purpose and humanity. It's a lot of what I've learned around putting purpose as the North Star and people at the center. It's the ingredients of unleashing human magic. It's about what it takes to be a purposeful leader. It's full of very concrete stories and illustrations. Most people today are convinced that these things done right are the right things to do. What I'm excited to do is share a lot of what I've learned on how to do these things. Other books that I'm excited about on top of what Hortense mentioned, I would absolutely advertise Hortense's book, just in case. I'm Hortense's agent, so Aligned, Connecting Your True Self with the Leader You're Meant to Be. It's a great book. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is such a powerful book, right? It's at the heart of every human being is a secret desire, or not so secret, to do good things in the world. Even the, you know, Darth Vader in Star Wars, his son believed there was still some good in him. And so the search for meaning is so essential. So these are a couple of books.
And True North, of course.
Of course, and Bill George, yeah.
So one of and also let me, before I go to the next question, clearly there's been some Ignatian reading done by the two of you, as well as reading in Latin. If I'm reading between the lines, I'm so quite impressive. So the last question I think we'll have a chance to get to, and it's once again a thread that runs through a number of things. You've talked about, you know, kind of helping people figure out what they want to do, but probably even more importantly, you've talked about helping people to figure out who they want to be. Maybe just spend a minute before we have to wrap up, just talking about those two elements and maybe how you see them intersecting in people that are successful. So, you know, to get back to, you know, to know yourself, there are some tools. For example, I have, you know, if I take my example with my experience from my coaching, you go back to your early dream. When you were young, we had a dream. We all had a dream. And so it's very helpful to come back there and to remember what was your dream and why. For example, if you wanted to be a vet,
it's okay, maybe today you are not a vet, but why? Maybe it was to take care of people or for animals or people or whatever. So, and you can find your driver there. Another exercise to find yourself is to think about what you want people to tell about you at your funeral. And why at your funeral? It's because we are all, you know, personal and professional. So it's not only about professional, but if you think about it, if you try to write it, we did the exercise, you know, last week with some people, and it was hard for them because it's difficult. It's difficult, you know, to project yourself. You are not here anymore. So what do you want your best friend telling about you, your family telling about you, your team, the person you work with telling about you, and all that are tools and clue to find exactly what are your values and your driver, and from there, you know, what kind of leader you want to be. So, what do you want to be remembered? So this is 2 or 3 or 4 little clues.
So I have a story for you, Tom. So you remember in the old days before COVID when we used to fly maybe over the Atlantic? So the pilot of the plane takes the mic and says, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is we're way ahead of schedule. The bad news is I have no idea where we are, probably because he doesn't know where he's going, right? And so this is the story of our life. We may be rushing from one thing to the other, but if we don't know where we're going, we're going to be like the headless chicken that Hortense was talking about. So taking the time to define our purpose in life, our meaning, the meaning of our life, who we want to be is essential. And the question of how you do this, I think Hortense's book is full of examples of this. Bill George's book, True North, emphasized the importance of you know, crucibles and using them to move to the next stage. The spiritual exercises are a good, you know, way to discern, you know, what's giving you energy, what's giving you meaning in your life. There's also the Japanese concept of ikigai, right, which is the intersection of, you know, what the world needs, what I'm passionate about, what I'm good at, and how I can make money. So to the students who are listening, take the time to understand, you know, what are the needs in the world that you are passionate about, what's going to give you energy. Of course, develop some things you're good at. You'll also need to make some money along the way, but don't start with that. Especially if you're, you know, as you graduate. I remember when I graduated, I was the lowest paid graduate in my entire class because I was focused on first, you know, learning, building capabilities, and then before pursuing things I cared about. My purpose today is to try to make a positive difference on people around me and use the platform I have to try to make a positive difference in the world, which is why I've written this book. I'm now teaching because, like you, right? How beautiful is that to try to give to the next generation and help them become the best leaders they can be, working with Hortense, helping executives and CEOs, you know, navigate through these crises. These are things that give me immense meaning and so much energy.
So it's really about.
Well, thank you both. Go ahead, Hortense. Do you have something else you want to say before I'm forced to wrap up because of time?
Yeah, I know. So just quickly, you know, it's really about so authorize yourself to be who you want to be, and go over. So unlock your potential by going over your self-limitation. Be aware of your self-limitation and work on it and say, okay, is it true or not? Just, you know, it is proof or not, and go over that and authorize yourself to be who you want to be. This is so important. This is a secret. Don't tell.
There you have it.
Well, thank you. I mentioned at the beginning, and I told you when we were talking, I was so excited about this opportunity, and this has really, I think, been just a fulfillment of what I really hoped we'd have an opportunity to get across. Your insights, your passion, and really, probably most importantly, the fact that you really model what we hope other leaders will model, which is a really, truly authentic, human-centered approach to leadership. It's a message, I think, that isn't often communicated, and the fact that you both have devoted your lives to communicating it now to people running from students through executives and everybody in between, I think that's really wonderful. And in addition to your perspective on what really should drive the enterprises that the people that are on this call happen to run, it's just beautiful in so many different dimensions. So thank you. And I just want to remind our audience that next week, we're not having it in 2 weeks, it's actually next week, we're going to have Louis King, the Chief Executive Officer of Summit Academy. Louis, who I'm sure Hubert, has been involved in transforming those who are often at the margin of today's world into people who have pride, not only in what they do, but in who they are. Very similar to what the two of you have done with the many that you have touched. We're going to preview part 6 on ThinkND with a few short videos in this coming week. Please review them and come prepared to engage. And I'll just close by thanking you both again heartily for a wonderful session, and a shout out to our audience. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next week on Inspiring Conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.